Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Ministravagana hobby stream. The first one, actually, I guess. Not another. It is another because this is like the third Ministravagana. I'm rambling. It's been a frantic morning, and it is time to relax, chill, and do some painting on this Mandalorian. So let's get this off of me onto the miniature, and let's just get going. Because I got to get this boy painted up in time for the Legion gameplay stream, which is going to be happening on Friday, where Din and Old Man Boba are going to team up with some rebels to take on the evil Empire with an IG-88 that's been hired into service. I'm going to start with my metallics here just because they're going to get maybe a little messy. To start with this coat, I want to get a really nice blue metallic kind of luster. Because looking a lot at the images and stuff, Din's armor has kind of this, sometimes, depending on the scene and the lighting, has this cobalt aspect to it. And so I'm going to be using that rather than like a colder gray or a semi-metallic to really dull it down. I want my Din to be pretty shiny, like it's freshly polished Beskar. And so adding that blue will really give that kind of like sci-fi steel look to it. Look at my reference really quick just to make sure that I'm painting everything right. All right, now we're going to go, and looks like he's got little booty plates. That might be wrong, but I'm doing it anyway. And that's definitely that. Summer's coming in to affect the camera. You do not get the helmet off option. That would be a little odd for our Mandalorian, who, especially in Season 1, refuses to take his helmet off for anything until IG-11 convinces him that he's not a living thing. But we all know IG-11 was totally a living thing. So no helmet options. You do get a couple of Grogu options, though. You can have Grogu, if you watched the Legion panel earlier, you saw the promotional image of the two painted miniatures from Star Wars Celebration. You've seen the Grogu doing the magic hands thing, but there's also a Grogu, which is this one, where he's eating his little frog friend. And so he's halfway through his little frog snack. Let's see, we'll get this little plate down here. And I know that center plate is kind of a different color, it looks like, from the images than the rest of the armor. But just to start, I'm going to get everything based in this color, and then I'm going to move on from there. So when doing metallics, there's a lot of different options. You can, of course, do non-metallic metals if that's the way you want to go, and non-metallic metals can look really slick. I've never been a huge fan, personally, of just painting non-metallic metal. I really like my miniatures to have the true metallics, and so that's what we're going to be going with today. And painting true metallics can be as simple as just doing a couple layers of dry brushing over black, doing a wash, doing some more like edge highlighting, and you can get a really convincing and good metallic effect. We're going to try to take it a little bit further than that today by using some semi-metallics in addition to our normal metallics, because one of the ways that non-metallic metal, oh, that's supposed to be leather. Whoopsie. We can fix that. Let's get our brush going on. Burr, 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 burr. Yeah, the emblem on his shoulder he doesn't have until like the very end of the show. But we really wanted to include that because of his inclusion with Grogu. And if you don't want it on there, it's a really simple element to just cut off. So you can either file it off, you can clip it off with a little bit of hobby knife work. So there are options to it, but we figured that keeping it on there kind of fit the overall artistic vision and stuff of the character, because I mean, by the same token, the magic hands thing really comes in at the end of the series as well. of Season 1. He does use it on the Mudhorn once, but if you were watching the panel earlier, you saw the artwork, which is very much evocative of the big season finale where they're fighting Moff Gideon and his Imperial Remnant after they arrive. And so that was kind of our larger inspiration. All miniatures, inevitably, when you design them and you concept them, are kind of like moments in time. They capture a feel or a specific scene, or they're trying to evoke specific emotions. And because the story of Din and Grogu and their relationship and them forming their own little tribe is so core to the entire Mandalorian experience, and we don't know when we'll get to a different version or a newer version of Mandalorian or anything like that in the game. Sometimes you have to look at it and you make choices like, okay, well, this only happens at the very end, but it really fits kind of the composition and the tone, the story that we want the miniature overall to tell. And like I said, it's really easy to remove if your vision for your Mandalorian and child is a little different, and that's okay. So that's why he has the Mudhorn emblem on his pauldron. So there's a couple ways to keep your metallics from drying up right away. The first is to use a wet palette, probably the best way to do it. The wet palette will obviously slow the drying time and give you a lot of working time because it keeps the paint moist and ready to go. I don't have a wet palette today, so instead I have a well palette, so a really deep well palette, especially if you live in a wetter climate, like we're in the Pacific Northwest. It's not super dry up here. It's there's a decent amount of moisture in the air just because we're so close to the water, and we do get a lot of rain and condensation and stuff. Precipitation. So a deep well palette, and then what I do is, you should always be adding a little bit of water to your paint anyway, just to like loosen it up so that it flows well and comes off the brush well. And what I'll do is every time I get done and I go back to load, I will typically wash my brush out, which gets rid of any of the excess paint that didn't come off the brush that might be drying, and then also allows me to add a little bit more moisture into the paint to keep it loose when I go back in to reload the brush. So it's kind of like a working combination to do that, where you're constantly adding a little bit, and not a lot, just a little bit of additional water, of a little bit of moisture into the paint. The other thing that you can do is you can use a medium. So you can use like a mixing medium or a glaze medium or something like that in a lower amount, and that will also extend your working time with the paint. And there's a lot of artist mediums out there that will help with the working time and help you kind of extend the amount of time you have for it before it dries on the palette or dries on the miniature and stuff like that. And it's kind of like exploring what works best for you, what makes the painting experience the smoothest and most enjoyable. And everyone's going to have kind of, just like cooking, everyone's going to have their own kind of mix, their own little secret ingredients that's going to make it work for them. But those are the places to start. Wet palette, number one. If you feel like you're not getting the working time out of your paints before they're drying, get a wet palette. Make a wet palette. You don't even have to buy a wet palette. There's tons of options out there, and they're all pretty much just as good as the other. There's great videos on how to use a wet palette, how to load the wet palette, all that stuff. So there's a little bit of a learning curve, but once you have it, you're going to realize all the benefits of it, and it's going to be great. So that's my number one suggestion. And then if you don't want to do that, you just, come back to the wet palette, then the well palette, and then just start working with finding what works best for where you are in your conditions. The paint that you're using can make it very different too. Adding a little bit of water to loosen it up to start, making sure that you're consistently adding a little bit of water every time as you work through it. It's going to extend that drying time and stuff. And then last but not least, you can always go into a medium and an extender, a drying time extender, of which there are tons of at any hobby or art supply store. You can do a little bit of research, find one that works well. You just need to make sure it works with acrylic paints, because that's typically what we all work with. And so as long as it's an extender for an acrylic paint, it's going to be just fine to use. You'll want to pay attention a little bit to like the warning labels and stuff, just to make sure that if you do wind up with something that might not be non-toxic, or there's not very many of those out there, I don't think, but it's always good to just read the label, know what you're getting into, so that you can work around it appropriately as well. But most acrylic mediums are just like acrylics themselves, not going to be non-toxic. They're going to be non-toxic most of the time. But you should always check. Okay. Great. So we got our base coat down. It's very blue right now. Very blue. Mandalorian does have several more cards that we haven't shown yet. All right, we're going to move on to his cape. His cape is like a darker brown, so I started with a little bit of Gobi brown from Scale, which has a little bit of green in it, and then we're going to work colors over the top of it, but this is going to make kind of a nice undertone that we can play with. And we'll get kind of that military drab black cloak. There's a lot of color. Looking at some of the images, there's a lot of color on this guy than just like flat black. But blacks are often that way. We talk about how blacks are defined by their highlights, and a lot of that is their undertones. And so we're going to make a really rich kind of military uniform feeling black cloak. And to do that, I'm going to rely on a little bit of green and some grays, just giving it that life and color. And it's also going to make the cape feel more lived in and worn. That little bit of warmth is going to add that life to it. And so this is kind of where we're going to start. And you'll notice I didn't Zenith prime this guy. Part of that was because I knew I was going to be doing a lot of metal on him. And then the other part of it was that his colors are all really deep and fairly dark. He's not like a comic book character or, an animated character. He's got that Star Wars kind of grit and grime, that really great lived-in feel from the Galactic Civil War era, where everything is a little older, a little dingier. And so leaving him just with a flat black prime and not doing the Zenith, well, it makes the work that I have to put in to do the highlighting a bit more, and especially on the base coats a little bit more. It will lead to a deeper and kind of a darker color overall. And I felt like that was really going to make this character sing in the way that I wanted it to. So I'm using it as a tool. To get my final color composition looking the way that I hope that it looks, that I want it to go, especially when I look at, are you going to come out, paint? Oh, come on. My goodness. There we go. So I'm going to use it as an aid to kind of help me get the results that I want from everything. Okay, so now we're going to work on the jumpsuit. I'm going to have to find some reference to the boots, because unfortunately the picture that I have on my phone right now that I'm kind of working from cuts off at the boot at the lower knee. So we'll figure that part out. I'm not too worried. And if I make mistakes and kind of slop over on metallics, it's not really a huge deal. I'm going to try to keep them as clean as possible. But, whoa, there goes my brush in my mouth. Now it's on the floor. Goodbye, brush. But all I'm really doing at this stage is just trying to block out my base colors. And that also gives me a good way to check out the overall composition of my colors, determine if anything's not working the way I want, or if I want to change any kind of like big strokes from the composition. Maybe I don't feel like the brown on the pants is quite red enough, things like that. Or it's not working with the blue steel like I thought. And at that point, it's really easy to just dive back in and change things because I haven't gone whole hog into like finishing the metals and all of that stuff. How can I, I don't work with a very clean palette ever, so I'm just kind of used to it at this point, I guess. I know which colors that I'm working with, and so I can just kind of like find them, but I realize that I'm probably a little bit in the minority when it comes to that stuff. And most folks are horrified by how uncleanly and unkept my palette is, but I've been that way forever. I clean it once the dried paint stops it from being a well. And this isn't even my palette. This is just the streaming studio palette, so there's a little bit of that, like who's going to do the dishes first? Who's going to take out the garbage first? So I feel like we sometimes play a game of chicken, me and Dallas, where it's just like, yeah, just let it build up. You going to clean it? Nope. I don't think it needs to be cleaned yet. Sneak in under that neck. And get that, even though no one's really going to see that. I'm still going to do it because I want to. It's all about me, me, me. So yeah, so next up, in terms of the streaming schedule, I believe we have the X-Wing panel. Yes, Summer? What's next? Come on, you got the schedule in front of you. I don't. I only have beautiful pictures of Din. Oh, Dallas. We got Dallas coming up next. He's going to be doing some cool painting and hobbying, and then it must be the X-Wing stream. I bet. Smooth this out a little bit. All right. So Dallas it is. He's going to be doing another hobby stream. Then we've got the X-Wing panel. And then I believe after that is an X-Wing extravaganza game where we're going to be playing with the new Battle of Yavin scenario. So if you're curious about X-Wing and you want to see how 4 players take on the famous Battle of Yavin, you should check that out. We're going to have a lot of fun. It's going to be a wild and rambunctious time. I see Simone Elliott get in there and dominate at X-Wing like she dominated against Plummer earlier this week. It's your time. All right. Yep, and if you want to check out The Mandalorian, Mr. Din Djarin's card, I'm sure it's been posted on all of the different Legion community sites, or you can go back and watch the YouTube archive and check out the stat card. And we showed off one command card, one of his upgrade cards. There's many more cards in there, but we've got to save some things for Summer and BK to be able to do. Otherwise, they get cranky with us. All right, so I'm going to get some khaki. So I'm pretty happy with where these colors are going. I do need to figure out. Summer, find out what color the Mandalorian's boots are. Do it to it. looks like they're kind of blackish brown like the cape, which works fine. All right, so far I'm liking where this is going. I do have to do some belts and stuff. We're going to use, they're like a black brown, you know, leathery. They're leathery. This dude wears nothing but leather. Brown leathers all the way. All right, let's see if this comes out. Nope. That is one tried tip. Okay, let's find an alternate color. Parasite brown, gross. We'll do this. We're gonna use some earth. Ooh, maybe, if it mixes for us. I wish I had Bantha brown, that'd be great. These paints haven't been shaken in a while. There we go. Gross. Okay. So we'll use this lighter brown for all of our little strappy straps. I'm not going to sweat too much right now about the differences in the buckles and the different kind of highs and lows of these belts. We're going to let our brown wash really take care of a lot of that. And just cheat it out. But a lot of browns. A lot of browns. He's a very utilitarian boy. And then we can always go back through with different washes. And this is one of the fun things about doing browns or blacks. You can actually get away, if you want to, basically painting every brown the same light brown. So we could have used this like earth brown would have been a great one because it's right in that slightly more highlighty than mid-tone. And then we could just go back through with different colored washes. So we could use like a more red brown wash, a more blue brown wash, a black brown wash. And by applying those transparent layers over the top of our basic brown, we'd end up with very different looking browns as well. So kind of base coating all of the leather straps in the same color doesn't mean that they're all going to look identical by the time that we're done. Like if I decide, hey, this little pouch on his side, I want that to have more red to it. I can mix a red-brown wash and poke that in, and then we're good to go. And that's true of a lot of different colors. Your blacks can be the same way. You can use different undertones to get very different blacks, but use the same black color over the top of those undertones. So that's made a huge mess there. Just a massive, sloppy mess. We'll fix it. We'll fix it. But those can be some of the quote-unquote cheats, painting hacks that you can use to really speed up the process and still get a really visually interesting and exciting miniature. And paint job, and it's really spectacular and fun. It's almost like magic to watch how different you can make the same color look by using transparencies. We actually have a little Vortex paint mixer, but it's not plugged in currently. And it's not near me, so I can't use it today. But I use it a lot. They can be very helpful. Just to kind of like get paints, especially ones that you haven't used in a while. Of which I dug up a whole case of Vallejo paints that we had lying around the office, and I don't think we've touched them in a few years because we've kind of been just using a lot of scale stuff. And so you can definitely tell a couple of them have been sitting around for a while. Not in use recently, but that's okay. Just give them a hard shake. They come out kind of goopy, give them another hard shake. No biggie. Base coat on, do this one, this little pouchy pouch. his upper shin pouch. Maybe it's where he keeps his spare whistling birds. Whistling birds are super rare. He uses them all the time. And based on the command card in Legion, we know why. Crazy good attack. Okay. I think we're going to do the gloves the same color as the boots, so that'll be easy. All right. Oh, we got the strap around the biceps. His true gun restrainers right there. Let's put those in. Knock those out. Yeah, Margo talked a lot about the pose and everything, the work that was done on it. We went through so many iterations to get that quick draw gunslinger feel right. We really wanted to feel like he had just fast drawed on somebody. You see so much in the show, that classic like spaghetti western kind of feel. Ultimately it led to us nixing the Amban sniper rifle option because in the end we felt like this was the pose that really captured the character and the flavor, and especially in combination with Grogu, told that story and gave that look, that visual composition that we really wanted out of the pair of them. You always look at miniatures. It's an art. It's an art piece in an art form, and we're kind of like laying down the framework of the canvas for everyone, and then it's every player's job to kind of interpret that canvas and make it their own. And so it can be really fun. There are no build options for Din. He just is what he is. I'm going to take a little bit of this blue wash, a little bit of black wash. Maybe not. There we go. A little bit of black, and then if I can find a brown, which you'd think I would have pulled, but Lord only knows. Doesn't look like it's up there, so it's got to be in here. Sepia? Sure. We'll go with sepia. Why not? Well, it's close enough to brown. One more yellow. I'm just going to throw it on the ground. Why not? Screw it. Screw it. Get on the ground, wash. Okay. Mix that up. It's pretty good. And then I'm just going to start putting this over our metals. Just kind of start getting in that shade, really defining those recesses in that area. And then we'll go back through and start working on highlights and stuff, but we want to dull down those metallics. It's true. Ewoks. If I had Ewoks to show, that would definitely take the whole thing down, apparently. Those little drop bears are in the ceiling. Just waiting. They're chewing on the power cables. That's Minox, but could be Ewoks. Insatiable curiosity, as Pagani mentioned, is their way to destroy all kinds of different toys from other units. So who's to say their insatiable curiosity didn't take down our internet for a little while? So we're just going to work this wash in, get it, slop it everywhere. You can see how it's really bringing out the contrast around those little crevices and stuff. That's really where I want it. I want it to pool a lot in those recesses, in those areas of shadow. Then we'll come back through and we'll kind of reclaim everything as it goes. Yep. So this is kind of like the longer process. You know, a lot of the times on stream I'll try to blast through a character or like one unit trooper in about an hour and show ways to get characters painted really quick, because it's Ministravagana and just because it's the Mandalorian and I really want to take my time. I noticed that I missed some of the pauldron or some of the greave down there. I'll get that in a second. This is kind of more my standard, like, I'm going to paint something that I'm going to take my time on process. And so who knows where we'll kind of end up today. Because, like, you know, just a base estimate, something like Din here would take me 2 to 3 hours, depending on how much time I put in to some of the highlights and the washes, and just the whole process. So not everything is super fast. Sometimes it's just like slowly building up layers and taking down colors and then bringing the colors back, playing around. The great thing about miniature painting, and really painting in general, I suppose, is that you can iterate a lot. So if something doesn't look the way you want it to at any point in the process, there are always ways to like change the color, to kind of revert back and start again with a different plan in mind. You know, if I decided that all of a sudden I just really didn't like this blue undertone to my metallics, I didn't think it was working really well, you know, I can go back and I can fix that. I can either repaint the area, I can use some different heavier transparency washes and stuff to like start to tint things back. If I wanted to shift the color more towards like a gray or maybe a brown, there's ways to do that. So you have a lot of control and a lot of flexibility and freedom. All it really takes is a little bit of time, patience, and perseverance. And don't ever let anybody but you determine your timeline. So if you want to take some more time on a character and you know, there's nothing that says you have to have the thing painted in an hour or two. You can always, you know, get it that hour paint job done, and like we talk about on stream, go back and iterate later. You know, once the paint is dry, doesn't mean you can't keep painting it. You want to try something else, or you're not quite happy with how something turned out, that was a mistake. It's okay. There. All right, so there. So we're bringing that blue way down now. So now we're getting closer to that metallic gray. Which is absolutely where we kind of want that stuff. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take a little bit of this red purple Indian shadow and I'm going to mix it in with my base brown. Let's see if we can make kind of a rooty red brown highlight for our leather undersuit that our Mandalorian is wearing, because looking at the reference picture, it's got a lot of red in the leather, so I think that'll be a good start here. So we're just going to kind of come in. I'm going to need that brush that fell on the ground. Just going to start blending in this red top coat. So that darker brown is really just the undercoat. You know, this lighter red brown that we mixed up wouldn't cover nearly as well over the black. It would have taken a lot of coats. And the undertone of the black wouldn't have really looked quite right. So by using that initial umber brown before mixing in the red and kind of creating our, what I really consider the base coat here, is this red, this redder brown. You know, the paint is still going to have some translucency to it. It's not completely opaque. So that undertone of the umber is going to help that red brown really look like brown. Makes the paint go on a lot easier, a lot smoother, because I'm not trying to cover black, which is a really strong color, with a lighter color. So this is part of like that working in layers and iteratively, is like, just because the undercoat is black doesn't mean that's where you have to start. You know, you can paint, if we were working on gold, you can paint gold over black, but a way to make your life easier when you're doing true metallic gold is to paint a nice reddish umber brown over the black and then put the gold on top of it, because the umber as an undertone really helps sell the gold, and it amplifies all those nice yellows in the gold, and it helps it coat in fewer coats, which means that you're less tempted to kind of slop on the paint heavier and all that stuff. So clever use of undercoats and layering can definitely help save you time and improve the overall look of your results. And some of that's just coming in with a plan. Some of it's like experimentation, watching what other people do, taking their methods and somewhat applying them to the things that you like to do, all that stuff. And then again, just giving yourself the space and the time that you need to be able to execute it properly. As long as you do that, you're going to see, you know, better results. You're going to see growth. You're going to get that final composition that you really wanted in the first place, that you were looking to having. There are a couple of things after the gameplay stream today. I think there is an Armada hobby thing, rapid reinforcements. Dallas is going to be painting a couple of the ships from that Rapid Reinforcements 1 release in some more faction-specific colors. So he's going to be talking about how to approach kind of customizing the paint schemes to make a match. And then, of course, we're going to be hanging out tonight, doing some more Star Wars chit-chatting and painting and all of that with a bunch of folks from the studio. I know Simone Elliott has a low grade of paint. I'm probably going to continue to work on this Din Djarin. We got a Pagani. I think Josh is going to be joining us. So if you want to just come hang out, listen to us kind of chat about all things Star Wars, Legion, X-Wing, Armada related, that'd be a great time to do it. We'll be there doing our thing, rocking out. Actually, I think we have enough of that. Take some of, well, maybe I'll take this. That'll work. Give me, there we go. This birch will work, maybe. Shake it up here. There we go. Yeah. Just gonna keep cranking on these leathers because they're underneath everything else. So if I can finish them out, then all I have to do is just be kind of careful with my metallic armor strokes and stuff. Should be pretty good. I need to loosen that. Paint is really thick. There we go. Okay. Just going to move on to a highlight color for our leather. And again, now I'm just trying to really accentuate the red kind of highlight nature of the brown. So you can see how that eggshellish white. And this is kind of one of the things to think about when you're mixing in kind of your white, your quote-unquote white. If I'd used flat white in my red base brown, because there's a lot of red in there, I would have gotten a pink. And that can work. You could definitely use a pink for like a really extreme highlight and then tone it back down with a brown wash or glaze. But by using a more yellow white, like the birch, you avoid the pink. Same idea like when you're highlighting, when you want like a really strong primary red and you're looking for like a mix to lighten it, to bring it up and make it more highlighty. Instead of using white, which will turn it pink, using a flesh tone, like a peachy flesh tone, a peach color, will actually get you better results. You'll get more of like a salmony red, which avoids the pink because of the yellow. So a little more orangey to it. And it will actually make the red feel more punchy. It won't wash out the red and turn it into kind of like a lighter a bubblegum pink. So, again, this kind of comes back to just learning your colors and experimentation and practice, but knowing, having that arsenal of a couple of different whites, a couple of different blacks with some different tonal shifts will make a huge difference when it comes to like taking your base colors and doing highlight mixes and all of that. Because flat white and flat black are great for some things, flat black more so than anything else, but flat white, it's both those colors really dull down whatever they're mixed into. So it's always better to find like, a black with a little bit of blue in it, or a black with a little bit of red or green in it. And that will make all the difference in keeping your colors feeling really vibrant and lively and not dull and kind of dead. There's a time and a place for that as well, but I think a lot of people when they first start out kind of struggle with that because it's like, oh, okay, so I mix white into this to make it lighter and I mix black into it to make it darker. And while that works, it doesn't give you the best results. Those colors really don't amplify and improve the visual presentation of your colors. So taking other colors that mix well and work with the base color that you're either trying to shade or highlight or whatever will give you much better results. And overall, make you more confident in painting and experimenting. And once you start doing it a little bit, you'll get that bug and you'll just start going more and more down the rabbit hole. And instead of having to, go through the whole like nightmare of trying to learn color theory, you'll just kind of like organically start to understand the important bits of color theory and why, certain things work and why they don't. Or maybe you'll never understand why they work, you'll just know that they work. And that's cool too. I know how a lot of things work, but I don't know why they work. And I'm okay with that. You know, I'll let experts figure out how they work. I just need to know, or I'll let experts figure out the why they work, and I'll just know how they work so I can do it. Totes cool. All right. Doing pretty good here. As to where we are on this guy, I think those browns are really coming together. We might need a little. I might need a little glaze at the end just to bring them all down, but we'll mess with that when we get there. Right now, I think I'll just finish out some of these little spot highlights. Then we'll move on to our next bit, which may happen later, but we'll talk about where I would go next because we're almost out of time. Get that elbow knocking out. Knock this out. Okay. All right, so I'm pretty happy with where that brown is. I think it might need like one more level of high scritches, but that's okay. I got some thrash metal here. I'm going to go in, and we're just going to start kind of picking up a little bit of our base blue. I'm just going to be messy, and I don't want to get too much of it here. That's pretty good. And then what I want to do is I'm going to go in. Just going to start highlighting our metallics. I'm going to do this because it won't take super long. And there'll be more steps to this as well probably, but let's kind of give an idea of how the overall approach. So we really dulled down our metals. We started with that blue. We've got that nice blue undertone. And now we're coming back in with our true metallic metal. And we're just going to start reclaiming colors. Yeah, thrash metal is, I mean, I think all of the silvers from scale are interesting because they're not like your typical chainmail, standard kind of like fantasy silvers. They're not really true silvers. They got a lot of different colors in them, and they obviously don't work in progression. Going from like scales black metal to thrash metal, which is kind of the next one up, they don't share similar properties, so they don't really work well together. What I like to do with them is mix them with some of the colored alchemy metallics. So like here I've got my thrash metal and I've got my cobalt blue, and that's kind of how like I'm approaching building up these colors. And then maybe I'll take some speed metal or something for some really bright highs. But I think it comes down to looking more at the alchemy colors and building them out from there rather than trying to use each silver as a progression level. I don't feel like they were intended to work that way, and I don't think they really do work that way. But I could be wrong. That's just my experience. It's just kind of what I've found in playing with them and stuff. I think their golds are a lot more progression based in terms of like you take Viking gold and then you take Dwarven gold, I think is the one that I always use in the next progression, and they kind of work better together in certain ways. But experimentation. But thrash metal I like thrash metal a lot just because you get that really nice brown, and one of the ways to shade true metallics as I did on this guy, even though there was more blue in my initial mix, is to use a mixture of black and brown ink and then turn that into a wash. And most pre-mixed armor washes are a mixture of that already, so I'm not really doing anything like unique. I'm just making my own armor wash. but because thrash metal has that brown undertone to it a little bit, it takes that wash really well. And so you can use that to your advantage too. So much of painting is just learning the paints and like what they do well and what they don't. Like, I don't like that, so I'm just gonna get rid of that. I don't think that worked. Just come back in with a little bit of. Cool. All right. Looks like we got 3 minutes left. So I'm just going to keep dirtling along here, doing my silvers. But this is going to be the process now. So I'm just going to continue to work on the armor metallics. I'm going to take my thrash metal. I'm going to build up each of my highlights here. Then I'm going to go and start working on adding a little bit of that probably speed metal, which is like the white silver, to it, and I'm going to take that and use it to make some like spot highlights, and then at that point I should have a pretty nice looking true metallic that'll have that dullness that real metals have, and that spot shininess. And then the big thing for true metallics, if you really want to keep that metal flake, that shimmer, that shine in there, is after you finish and seal the miniature, you go back in with your metallics and you add a little bit of that edge highlighting, because of course any kind of matte sealer is going to dull the metallic down, and you can use that to your advantage as well, because then you just go back in, you add those little shiny edge highlights with your metallic base, and it's going to make it look even more like real metallic, because you're going to have that dullness contrasted with that light hit of shiny silver. So that's kind of the last chef's kiss secret to getting really amazing true metallic results. Is you're not done once the miniature is completed and sealed. You have one more step. You got to go back in, do one last little bit of highlighting, and once you've done that, you're done. Your true metallics are really going to shine. If you want to know more about this process, Dallas has done some amazing classes and hobby streams about it. From, I think he did one last Ministravagana. He's in a couple of like Gen Con and stuff like that. So all that stuff's archived on YouTube. So you can go see the full process, and he'll explain every step of it throughout the thing. Yes, metallosity, as Dallas calls it. Improving your metallosity. I think that might be the title that you want to go looking for. If you search metallosity on YouTube, it'll come up, I guarantee you. But really interesting like theory and technique, and a lot of fun to learn and practice, and just visually striking on the tabletop. Like, I love, we talked about at the start, I love true metallic. Like, to me, I think that looks so much more eye-catching and visually interesting than non-metallic metals. So if you have questions about true metallics, maybe this has inspired you a little bit to go learn a bit more. Metallosity, search it up. Dallas Kemp, he'll teach you all you need to know. There we go. All right, time to be done. I'm not going to stop painting, so you just turn it off. I already warned them that we're there. All right, well, thank you so much, everybody, for joining me. We got another one coming right along the way. I believe we're going to be joining Dallas Kemp next in his own very special streaming studio. Till next time, I'll see you on the next one. Be sure to stick with us all weekend long. We got so much good stuff. I guess 1 weekend day, 2 weekdays. It's fine. We'll see you again. Take care. Bye. You can't stop me, Summer. I'm just going to keep doing this.